We've hit 800 YouTube subscribers, so a huge thank you to everyone for tuning in. You may see that a super thanks button is now available below the video, which is basically a little heart with a $sign in it. This is because the channel has grown to the point where we are now able to monetize it. If you click that button, you can give us a tip if you like what we do. We don't set the prices on YouTube, and of course, no one has to click if they don't want to. Thankfully, both Huw and I have day jobs. We will also be rolling out channel membership soon for 99p a month. So if you do have any ideas for us, let us know. Over to you, Huw.
Yeah, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and subscribe to the Substack as well. Links will be in the Linktree link in the description box below. If you subscribe to the Substack, you'll get all our content sent direct to your email inbox, including our Sunday read feature, which is a long read article that we do every single week. And now on to introduce our fantastic guest for this week. If you are on Rugby Twitter, you will undoubtedly know this man. You probably even follow him, is the internet's best known Blue Bulls fan, AP Cronje. How are you, mate?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for not only giving me the title of the internet's best known Blue Bulls fan, which I'm very happy to receive, but also thanks so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this.
Brilliant, mate. So let's crack straight on with our rugby moments of the week. Enda, do you want to talk us through yours?
Yep, sounds good. So I'm bringing up Amy Barrett-Theron again as my moment of the week, and just the way that she dealt with Bongi Mbonambi during the Lions v Sharks game over the weekend. There was a moment right before halftime, I'm sure everybody's seen the clip, where it looked like the Sharks had scored a try, but the decision was overruled, and Bongi approached Amy, and it was clear that he was quite frustrated. He wasn't particularly, I don't think, rude and maybe too disrespectful as some people are suggesting. Maybe overall in the entire game, you could describe his actions maybe as such, but I think he was obviously just quite animated and went up to Amy and asked her just to explain the decision. And I just thought that the way she dealt with was really professional. And in terms of, it was clear that she kind of could tell how frustrated Bongi is. And, she just calmly and politely asked him to walk with her. And then she just explained the situation. And she did ask him to respect her, and she expressed that she respects him. Now, I just think, I know it's, we always talk about hashtag rugby values, all that kind of stuff, but I just think it is one of these important moments that we should praise, and it should be called out, because this is exactly, one of those values that we have in our game, that one of those values that we should be proud of, and that's respect for the referee. If this was Nigel Owens, it would have went way more viral than she already has. So I just think, yeah, really nice moment. And yet another example of her kind of taking charge of her game and not putting up with any nonsense in a really polite way, which is really good. And even Bongi's reaction as well, you could see that he completely respected her decision, the way she spoke to him. And yeah, they just got on with the game. But yeah, really nice moment for me. What about yourself, Huw?
So mine came in the Brisbane Thunder versus Gwalior Lightning game in the Celtic Challenge this weekend at Parker Scarlets. Sioned Harris, who is a legend of Welsh women's rugby, was playing her final ever game. And she scored a try in this game, and it was a fantastic win for Thunder, which we'll talk a bit more about at the end of the show in our rugby roundup. But she also, just before going off and receiving the ovation that she so richly deserves, kicked a drop goal and absolutely nailed it, went straight over, obviously got big embrace from all of her teammates. And it was revealed after the game that they'd all said, look, if we've got a decent lead on the scoreboard, Sioned, you need to do something cool. You need to sign off in style. And she went for the drop goal and she absolutely nailed it. She's number 8 as well, by the way, for people who don't know. So absolute legend. So absolutely love that. AP, have you got a moment, mate?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I had the privilege of being at a sold-out Loftus Versfeld to watch the North-South Derby, Bulls against Stormers, big grudge match. Bulls having lost against the Stormers, arch enemies, 7 games in a row. All the pressure on them for them to then get the result was amazing. But actually, I'd say that my moment of the match, or rather even my moment of the week, was something which didn't happen in the professional rugby game. It didn't happen in the game at all. It was before kickoff, as sort of everyone filed into the stands. Anybody who's been in Pretoria, Johannesburg, and the Highveld, as the area of South Africa is called, can tell you that there are thunderstorms that can appear out of absolutely nowhere. So you'll have bright blue skies, as it was on the weekend, until about 3-4 p.m. And then all of a sudden, these huge cumulonimbus storm clouds arose out of nowhere, and it started thundering and lightning and hail and rain. And so everyone sort of retreats out of the stands because it's not fully covered, and we're sort of sat in the walkways. And kickoff was delayed 25 minutes, and then it was delayed 40 minutes, and then it was delayed an hour, and it sort of there was this definite sense of tension in the air in terms of, are we going to is the game going to go ahead? Is 50,000 people have come to this. The Bulls are finally looking like they might have a shot, and it would be such an anticlimax if it were not to happen. And then my moment of the week was very much, all the tension was cut when two young kids, probably I'd have to guess like 11 or 12, just the age where you start to become a bit naughty, but it's still endearing. They vaulted the sort of sidelines and started basically pitch invading. And it's sort of the type of pitch invasion that you're like, we don't usually like pitch invaders, but when there's no rugby going on, everyone's sat soaking wet and a bit anxious just to see these two kids. One of them was a Bulls supporter in a Bull shirt. The other one, obviously his mate, was a Stormer supporter in a Stormer shirt. And to see these two partners in crime basically tear across the pitch to the absolute adulation and roars of applause from the crowd it was quite something to see. And I think that, in the professional game, or just in rugby in general, we can sometimes be so down on ourselves and so cynical about everything. This was such a nice, like light-hearted moment in otherwise quite a intense environment, that I thought that for me, that was just a genuine moment of fun.
That's awesome. I had no idea about that watching it here in the UK, so that's fantastic. Thanks so much. So I'm going to share a couple of listeners' moments now. So we've had, we put a tweet out before the show saying, give us your moment of the week, and we've had a fantastic response. So thank you to everybody. So friend of the pod, David Lawrence of the Scrum of the Earth podcast, has written in saying, Ilona Mayer, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, my pronunciation is always terrible, destroying everybody and everything in her path. For USA Rugby in the 7 series this weekend. So that's a great one. Thank you, David. Another friend of the show, Leslie, aka Misao Panda, writing in about Ben Healy's boot once again dragging Edinburgh to another win. And drag to a win is a definitely correct way of describing it. Thank you so much, Leslie. And then Oliver writes in to say his moment of the week is Miami Sharks playing their first ever professional game of rugby in the MLR this weekend. So thanks so much to everybody who wrote in. If you want to let us know your moments of the week, you can reply in the YouTube comments or tweet us, and we'll read them out on the next show. So let's crack on and talk about some of the biggest news here going around the world of rugby at the moment. So we like to talk about rugby broadcasting here on this show. And Enda, there was some massive news about the autumn internationals in the UK this week.
Yeah, that's right. So according to the Daily Mail, it looks like TNT Sports are set to take over the broadcast rights to the Autumn Internationals from this year, on a 2-year run. And this is the last standalone deal before the launch of the new, what is it called? The Nations Championship, I think it's going to be called, from 2026. So it'll be interesting to see what happens from then. But this is, the last standalone rights cycle. It's quite interesting for me. Some key takeaways. It's actually understood that Amazon didn't place a bid for the rights. And this is also on the back of Amazon not placing a bid on the next cycle of English Premier League rights in terms of soccer in the UK. And this is also after Amazon pulled out of their broadcasting of tennis in the UK. So for me, a lot of this indicates that either Amazon, that their viewing figures aren't doing so well, or maybe they don't see, the revenue coming back in. Like a lot of people, Amazon are quite tight-lipped on their viewing figures. So we don't know if this was an Amazon decision or if administrators, weren't necessarily happy with the viewing figures. Will we ever know? I'm not so sure. A lot of people pointed out that the reason Amazon went for these rights was so that they could drive up their Prime subscriptions in the run-up to the Christmas period. Did they fail at this? Again, we're not sure. And one interesting piece I'd like to point out in this as well, like one of the reasons why a lot of the tennis has now gone back to Sky Sports is that a lot of the tennis administrators allegedly weren't happy with the viewing figures while Amazon had those rights. So what this tells me, and a lot of people don't realize, is just because you're only charging a really low subscription fee, that does not necessarily lead to higher viewing figures. And there is so much more to broadcast rights than simply, like everybody thinks, get it on a big platform, a big, IT platform like Amazon, and everybody will sign up and they'll throw loads of money at something and make a loss. Like that is not the case. And this is yet another example of that. I could be wrong, but for me, yeah, Amazon seem to be losing interest in sports broadcasting rights in the UK anyway, which is a notoriously difficult market to break into. You look at Viaplay, you look at ESPN, you look at BT. They have to do a joint venture with Warner Bros. Discovery. So yeah, it's a notoriously difficult market, but I think it's good overall for rugby fans. A lot of people are kind of pissed off at it. I don't see why, because if you're a real rugby fan, that's a bit harsh maybe, but if you're a big rugby fan, you're going to have a TNT Sports subscription where you basically get a load of good content now. So I think this is good news for those fans. But yeah, be interesting to see what happens in the next cycle. But they were the key kind of takeaways for me. Huw, do you want to talk us through another piece of big news from the week?
Yeah, so we thought, well, with there being no Six Nations this week, the England bashing would have a week off. But sadly, no. Sadly, there is more to bash. Or maybe not, because they're bashing themselves at the moment. So it was reported in the Daily Telegraph that players are now leaking to the press, or at least one player has leaked to the press, that the England men's team are not happy with the way that Steve Borthwick is doing training. Apparently, the backs don't touch the ball enough. Apparently, there's not enough emphasis on the attack. Now, this comes after we were told, and we've been told by some quite respected rugby analysts, that England's attack is evolving, and now it's come out that they're not actually working on the attack in training. So, AP, I saw you quote tweet about this, and it was talking about they're not that into maybe the new defensive structure either. What was your reaction to seeing this news?
Okay, well, there's a tricky one. I think, first of all, we should say we shouldn't necessarily over sensationalize the story. I mean, like, players talk to journalists all the time, and I think maybe, and I'm perhaps guilty of this as well, it might not be so much of a case that players are actively leaking to the press or trying to undermine Borthwick. It might have just been an offhand comment that a opportunistic journalist decided to spin into a story that's obviously done very well and it's grown legs. But having said that, there is obviously still a real sense of frustration, because otherwise it would have been brought up in the first place. And you have to kind of query how much of that is from within the internal squad, or how much of that is from, all the noise outside of the England camp saying, oh, England's attack is so crap, England's attack is so crap. And, why are we showing more attacking ambition? It's all very well and good. We want to implement this new defensive structure, but we need to see we need to see us evolve and attack. And my answer to that, truthfully, is no, you don't. I think England fans are so short-termist and are so almost myopic and so focused on wanting to evolve and attack that they're looking past the fact that they got within 1 point of beating the team that eventually won the World Cup, and would have won that game realistically had it not been for their scrum disintegrating, because they're not the first and won't be the last team that South Africa get the better of at scrum time. But England, and with respect to them, England are a average side that can be effective by making themselves hard to beat. And that's my attitude on it. And how do you make yourself hard to beat? You focus very intently on your set piece, which they have a good foundation there, and they have a caliber of players that can really make, really sort of go for that. So I think that they can very much have a very good, solid, functioning set piece. And then you evolve a really cogent defensive system. That's why you've brought Felix Jones in. And realistically, the players, the coaches, the fans, and the media need to sort of work collectively to buy into this. And that's sort of what my tweet was more about, which is that this system is not just a sort of just a all or nothing blitz system. It's all about a belief in it, and it's sort of, you have to commit to it. South Africa, who pioneered this incredibly intense blitz and scramble defense, they didn't get it right. If you look at that first series between the Springboks and England that Rassie took over, but Mike Brown playing on the wing was making the South African defense look ordinary. Now, with respect to Mike Brown, he was hardly the most creative and fleet-footed of attackers, and he was embarrassing South Africa's defensive system. They were tearing them open. They were conceding 40 points a game. So there are inevitably going to be teething problems with this system. That's a given. I just hope that the players and that Borthwick has sort of briefed them to understand that, yes, just be patient. There is going to be a lot of noise from the outside. We know what the English press is like. I mean, just to give you an example, like, you'd have thought the way that some of these articles are going on, that they've been blanked in every single game in the Six Nations. They've lost one game and some of the most respected pundits are going off the deep end. I mean, Stuart Barnes saying that he needs to play Ben Earl at 12. Like you couldn't even meme that. That's not even something that you could make up as an idea for an article. And bless him, he genuinely believes it. I don't even think he's just writing it for clickbait.
Not actually the first time he's written it. He's actually wrote it last year as well.
Exactly. But I mean, it's just like, so I don't know what's going on in England. I think that they're way too short-termist. They're way too prone to sensationalize things and to be reactionary. I think they just need to understand the reality of the situation, which is that they are a squad that has a good set piece, can add a very, very good defense, and that their best chance at the moment anyway is to make themselves hard to beat. If they want to go and play jouet attacking rugby against Ireland, I mean, good luck to them. They're coming up against the most structured, the most methodical, and the most, cohesive side in rugby in Ireland. If they want to play that game against Ireland, they're going to take 50. Their best chance against Ireland is to be dogged, to really go at them in the set piece, and to ultimately just make themselves really difficult to beat. It's something that Wales have done for years and years and years. And ultimately, that's what England need to realize, that they're not the caliber of Ireland or France. Sorry, I don't know if you love me, but they're not at the caliber of Ireland or France or South Africa. They're a step below that. And so their best opportunity at the moment is to make themselves tough to beat.
Yeah, it's funny that you say about short-termism, and I feel like Steve Borthwick is always forced into being short-termist. And Charlie Morgan wrote a really great piece about this in the Telegraph the other day, about how Steve Borthwick has always been in a rock and hard place. He's come into the England job having won one Premiership title. Now, okay, in his first season as a head coach, full season as head coach, he won the Premiership. So there's obviously something about him. But if you're like one of the Saracens cohort, someone like Jamie George, and you're coming in and you've won multiple Premiership titles and Champions Cups, and you've been on Lions tours and things, how much do you look up to Steve Borthwick? And are there England players in that dressing room who maybe don't have that reverence for the head coach? Maybe, I don't know, but you could argue that there are other coaches in the Premiership who have maybe a stronger CV than Steve Borthwick. Now, Steve Borthwick is clearly the man, and I think he has clearly had success in developing this game plan that we saw England played in the World Cup that was so effective, and it got them results. Okay, it was squeaky at times, and some, you'd say, tier 2 nations ran them closer than maybe you thought that they should. But yeah, I just find it interesting that Steve Borthwick at no point could have done what Warren Gatland has done with Wales, which is just smash the reset button and get a load of young players in. Because Gatland can do that, because he's been Lions coach and he's won Grand Slams, and he can say, no, I know best, and everyone has to believe in me. Borthwick doesn't have that cachet. And he could probably say that if he hadn't picked all these experienced players, England might have lost those first two games against Wales and Italy. And then it would be, oh my God, you think it's bad now? Like, it would have been, he might be gone already. So I think it's almost like a no-win situation for Borthwick. He's always going to keep people unhappy. I think to get through it, he just needs to be resolute and just back himself and say, look, if no one else believes in me, I've got to believe in me. And he's got to understand which of the players want to buy into it and play in his England. And if they keep getting the results, if you're winning, you can do whatever you want in all sport. So, if the wins come back, then he can turn around to people and say, look, there you go, I was right. Anyway, that's enough England chat in a week that they haven't played. Anyway, let's talk about England, hashtag. So let's talk about the URC then. Let's talk about the big game, the biggest game in World Rugby that happened this weekend, which is the one that you were at in Loftus. 50,000 people, second biggest ever crowd for a URC game. I don't know if that's this season, because I feel like Leinster fans are going to tell us they've had 52,000. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So tell us a bit more about this rivalry then, AP, between the Bulls and the Stormers, the North-South derby. Is it a really niggly game? Do the two sets of fans really not like each other? Is it a sort of a derby of clash of ideals? Tell us a bit of the history of this fixture.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It sort of dates back for probably centuries, to be honest with you, and it probably dates back if we're being realistic, probably longer than that. There's always been, as in most countries, you'll find, whether it be Italy or whether it be England or whether it be most places of America, like there seems geographically to always be a rivalry between the north and the south of a country. That's just somehow how it happens, and it's the case in South Africa as well. And that sort of spilt over in terms of the in the rugby as well. And then there was also the fact that it became a stylistic difference. It was always flash versus bash. If I take you back to the sort of the heyday of this rivalry, if we look at maybe 2008, 2007 to 2010, that sort of Bulls period of time, which was also a very good Stormers team, that's when you had Bakkie Spuita, Dani Rousseau, Farida Priya, Mornay Steyn, those guys in the Bulls camp. So playing very attritional, forward heavy, but then halfbacks controlling the game, kicking. Whereas in the Stormers camp, you had Jean de Villiers, Jacques Fourie, you had Brian Obana played for both sides, ironically, but you had, they were always much more attacking. So you had a difference of style as well. And I can tell you honestly that it's one of those clashes that is really niggly. Like it really is. Like the fan bases, I think it's ultimately there's always a sense of pantomime, but yeah, it's a lot of pride from both sides. I mean, in domestic rugby, Currie Cup rugby, historically, the Bulls or the old Northern Transvaal and the Stormers, and which is the Western Cape, or Western Province, they've always been the two best sides in South Africa historically, and so naturally there's just been that rivalry. So that, I guess, is just a brief overview, anachronistic history of it.
Cool. And obviously we mentioned it there, the massive crowd was there for it. So there's been lots of chats in the last week about how 10 years ago these crowds weren't attending like the Super Rugby as it was then in South Africa, and now it just feels like rugby has been super turbocharged. Now winning a World Cup helps, but is that purely what you would put it down to, or is what's brought the people back to South African rugby? Because it's not just this game, this has been the peak, but the Stormers crowds all season have been absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all kind of scratching our heads, to be honest with you. I was chatting to a bunch of other South African rugby fans who really know this stuff yesterday, and it was sort of the same thing. We were like, is it a World Cup hangover? Yes, probably. Is it the sense that our sides are actually performing much better than they have been in the last decade? Yes, it's probably that as well. Is it that we're seeing actual Springbok players coming back, not just leaving? So you're actually getting teams with recognizable stars in it. Yes, that plays a factor. So it's sort of a confluence of factors. But then for me as well, I think it's just a case that it's a positive feedback cycle, right? I mean, anybody who was at Loftus that game with 50,000 people can tell you, I can't wait to go back. If it's like that again, I can't wait to go back. And ultimately, if you go and it's sort of years and years and years of a tournament in Super Rugby that you were growing more and more dissatisfied or disillusioned with, and there's 5,000 other people in the stadium, and there's just no atmosphere, and you just sort of fall out of love with it. So however it's happened, and I think maybe the World Cup is the spark and everything else is just a catalyst that sped it up. It's sort of just this season, I think more than anything, people have really, really bought into it. And I think as well, it's a natural consequence of people are starting to understand the tournament they're playing in. As much as I've been championing the URC since day one, like I can't expect people to understand who are Leinster, who are Dragons, who are Scarlets, like what is Glasgow, right? You don't really understand how they fit into the ecosystem and where you fit into the ecosystem. You don't understand, like, if you've been watching Super Rugby for 20 years, you know the Crusaders are the team to beat. You don't like them. You know that the Reds and the Chiefs are going to throw the ball around. Like you have preconceptions and you have ideas of teams. Whereas you go into this tournament, which most South Africans hadn't really watched much of, and it will take a while. And we're now into the third season to sort of start engaging with it and start feeling it. And I think that's sort of what's increasingly happening. So for me, and this is what I said to the guys yesterday as well, what I really want to see now is that these crowds start pitching up for the Munsters and the Leinsters and the traveling sides as well. I mean, I think in the first or second season, I think 35,000 people went to Loftus to watch Ulster play. And I was like, it's those types of games we need to, because I mean, you're always going to get a crowd in for Bulls versus Stormers. Like that's got centuries of history behind it. when you start getting in 30,000, 40,000 people to watch touring sides, that's when you know you really got buy-in. And I'm optimistic. I really am, that if not this season, but I think it will be this season, and there are still teams that need to come, then definitely next season and onwards. I think that we're going to start seeing that as well, hopefully.
Yeah. And in terms of like the clubs, we all know that, there's a big financial backer behind the Sharks. I believe there's a big, backer behind the Bulls. That we all know that the Stormers story, we know the Lions are struggling a bit, but is the makeup of these clubs kind of, sustainable financially? Like if the Sharks, say, didn't have that big backer who puts money in, would they be in, obviously they would probably, well, we know where they are now, even with the money, they're at the bottom of the table, but you know what I mean? Would they be able to track those Springbok stars? Is this a sustainable model, basically, do you think? Or
$1 million question, and the $1 million question, and it's the $1 million question that no one wants to be asking. It's the one that I get a lot of I got a lot of grief from Stormers fans for saying, guys, for a team that's in administration, you do seem to be having a lot of Springboks, and I just kind of trying to understand how you're in administration, you're paying these guys their salaries. So there's a salary cap in place in South Africa, and it's sort of gradually creeping up and up and up. I'm one of the people that sort of say, look, red lights start flashing when you have the marquee player thing, which I think they're flirting with the idea of introducing that sort of marquee player system, because we all sort of know how that went in the Premiership. What you get is you get that wage inflation where your marquee players end up driving up the contracts of everyone else, and then you start getting into a tricky spot. So is it sustainable? I certainly hope so. I really trust that, or I hope that these guys have a good idea of what's going on. The truth of the matter is that every single club is kind of pulling a Saracens, where there is a salary cap in place, but it's kind of accepted and understood that players are being paid via sponsorships and all manner of things, Voonprop Limited, Faz Industries Limited type situation outside of that salary cap. It's been going on for ages, and it sort of happens at every single club. So it's like, it's not like, devious necessarily, because I suppose that the way that Sari looks at it as well, okay, these guys aren't systemic risk for the clubs themselves. If you want, private backers, or if you want people to pay you, by external sponsors, paying part of this player's salary, I guess go for it, as long as it doesn't compromise the financial stability of the clubs themselves. The other question, of course, is the fact that, the Sharks now have a private equity investment. The Bulls have two private owners, not necessarily private equity firms, but the Storm is now also about to complete a transaction with a consortium called Red Disa. So, private equity is notorious in the sense that they want to see a return on investment in typically like a 7-year investment horizon. And again, no one's really asking how and what happens when MVM Holdings and the Sharks decide, okay, we've tried this, not been successful, now we want to look to make an exit. So look, from a financial and governance perspective, which for me, I'm a bit like you, and I find that part quite interesting, and because ultimately that's sort of, in a professional game, that's what matters in the long term. That's not what people really want to talk about. So it means that sort of rugby nerds like us end up fretting over it, and can, we're a bit like Chicken Little screaming, watch out, watch out, watch out. But yeah, I mean, the truth is, I guess we'll wait and see. I'm hopeful that it isn't a meltdown, but there are some warning signs there. So let's just hope we can navigate these tricky waters.
And on the back of that, I suppose, do you see more players now from Europe going back to South Africa? That's, for me, been a massive success story of the URC, just seeing so many stars come back, and maybe not even just stars, just lesser known players who mightn't be Springboks, but seeing those guys come back, I think, for me, that's extremely positive. Obviously, a lot of that is probably financial, family reasons, but I'm sure part of that as well is, the allure of the URC as well, which I think is a really positive thing. Do you see more players going back, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, a guy, for example, just to take a story from this week, where it's now officially been announced that Gwibus Visa, who was obviously at Sale, is now coming to play for the Bulls. Jake White said for ages that the problem that South African rugby found, and why it wasn't as competitive as it should have been, is that you have these guys who are sort of at the end of their back end of their careers, they're sort of 34, 35 years old, and then you have guys who are like 21 years old. But ultimately, what you need to have a successful championship squad is you need guys basically in the 25 to 29-year-old range who are sort of at the peak of their powers, but also experienced enough. You can't just have lads and dads, basically, sustaining your squads. And I think I agree with you. The most positive element for me is you see guys like whoever's visa coming back. You're always going to be able to, potentially get a guy like Etzebeth back if the right conditions arise and the right number is on the contract. But ultimately, it's guys like whoever's visa coming back. That, for me, is a sign that our rugby's in really rude health. And I think that you're right. I think there is absolutely a sense that the URC plays into that. I think that, people were disillusioned with Super Rugby, but the other thing is that these guys are professional competitors, right? And ultimately, South Africa's side, Sharks notwithstanding, are actually performing pretty well. The Bulls and the Stormers, primarily. And ultimately, you want to be part of that. And home is home. So for these guys to be able to go home and play in a competitive league for competitive sides, that is absolutely a draw. I mean, how could it not be?
Yeah. I want to ask you, obviously, I think pretty much every South African side puts out a full, if not full squad, then at least a full 23 that is 100% South African brought through. Okay, maybe they've pinched a couple of players off the lines or the cheaters here and there. But do you ever see non-South Africans coming into South African rugby more? Do you ever see Europeans or Kiwis starting to put on franchise jerseys?
I mean, I'd love to see it. I think the sides historically that have had that more have been the Sharks. I mean, Freddie Michalak is sort of Sharks legend, and I mean Tony Brown played for the Sharks and the Stormers as
Andy
well.
Good.
Andy Good, Carlos Spencer played for the Lions for a bit. So I mean, there are sort of guys you can point to. I mean, currently you'd say in the Stormers starting 15, their starting 11 is Ben Loader, right? You'd say that he is chalked down as definitely a starter. So, I mean, and Jamie Roberts, unfortunately, COVID sort of put an end to that. I mean, Hugh Jones, I mean, he was at university in Cape Town, so slightly different. But you do get some guys who come through. I think realistically speaking, you probably don't see as much of that for two reasons. One is financial, that ultimately you're never really going to compete with any European club in terms of wages. And the other thing is that for non-South Africans to move to South Africa, understanding and being cognizant of all the difficulties that exist in the country, which, we have to be honest about, it's not always the easiest thing to try and get your head around. So if you're not used to the culture, it's a tricky move to try and validate yourself when, for example, you might have a pro-did contract on the table, which would pay you more, and then you can go and live in Grenoble, and that'd be lovely. So I'd love to see more of it. I think that any external rugby IP that you can get into the South African system is great, and I really love it at the Springbok level that they're bringing in coaches that bring in, I mean, just look at what Felix Jones did for the Springboks. Look at what Andy Edwards as S&C and Aled Walters did, and all these guys. So bringing that in, and now with Fla there, and now with Tony Brown there, it's just brilliant to see what they can bring and enhance the rugby overall. So I'd love to see more of it, but I'm realistic as to why we maybe won't.
That's great. Thank you so much. So let's talk about the game itself then. So Bulls came out on top, quite comfortably on the scoreboard in the end. For you, where was the game won and lost? And so who were the players who do you think made the difference for the Blue Bulls?
Halftime somehow, I mean, and the Stormers haven't had their best season this year, but somehow they were within a score at halftime, which
that was remarkable because they were stinking the place out.
They were played off the park and yet still in the contest at halftime. And that just speaks to their caliber, really. For me, anyway, that speaks to their caliber. And then after I said to some of the guys who sat with, I said, halftime, these guys are going to come out. And if they score within the first 10 minutes, then they're going to win this game. Somehow they're going to run away with this game. They've won games this season that they had no right to win. They've scraped victories. They just find a way. And they've got the win over us. But I have to give complete credit to the Bulls. They came out swinging. The Stormers came out swinging that second half. And for 10 minutes, they were camped on the Bulls' try line. And the Bulls just defended and defended and defended. And where it was won, I think, was the guy eventually was named man of the match. Player of the match is Ruan Nokia. He marshaled that ball. It was literally like watching Victor Matfield of old. Like, just had worked out the entire Stormers line out, was just stealing balls, was shutting down the mauls. And I think, he deservedly came out on top. But I mean, the whole collective effort, I think the scrums, Wilco Low stood up so well. Gerard Steenekamp, that Bulls starting front row really took it to the Stormers, and it's been an area where they've dominated us. So and Neething Fischer and Steve Satola are very, very good scrummagers, both of them. So no, I have to say it was, again, it's a bit of a cliche. It was one in the pack, but it really, really was. And then, the area, again, another guy I have to shout at, Embrace Papier, his kicking game, his contestable kicks were brilliant. Curtly Arends, I think I saw a stat somewhere that Warwick Galant dropped, I think he took maybe 6 of 15 balls. That's bad returns for your fullback, but that just shows you the pressure he was under from Curtly and Kanan.
Yeah, Galant, he's one of those. I've heard South Africans say talking about Galant, and now I've watched the Stormers more. I get it. I get what they're on about. So on the Stormers, then, so they are now outside the playoffs in the URC. Now there's not that many games left. We're beyond halfway point in the season, and everyone keeps talking about the Stormers like, oh, they'll be in the final, they'll be in the semi-final of the URC. At what point do we say have the Stormers fallen away?
It's a very good question, and now I'm going to absolutely dine out on this one because I've had to endure their fans telling me that they're the greatest team to ever play rugby. So, no. Look, again, do you know what? There's absolute bastards. The worst thing that I could imagine happening, which now means that there's definitely a thing that will happen, which is that they're going to scrape and get into 7th, and then somehow have to play the Bulls, and then squeak past us and knock us out, despite us finishing 2nd. That's why I can just see this happening as my nightmare scenario. I do think they'll make knockouts. But a part of me, I'm like, yeah, actually, for a change, go and play a knockout game, not in Cape Town. In that first season, the point to mention as well is at this point in the first season, which obviously they won, they'd won fewer matches than they had at this point in the season for this season. That was a bit convoluted, but I think they've won 6 games now, and I think in the first season they'd only won 5 at this point. So they have the potential to finish strong. They've only got 2 more games on tour in Europe. So they can definitely finish strong, and I think that they probably will make the knockouts. But then I'm like, yeah, good for you. Go play a knockout game not in Cape Town for a change, and take the game to someone else. But look, what I also think is we should probably recognize that the Bulls are good this year, right? Like, I think
very good. I picked you for the title before the season.
Yeah, they put away a full strength. Sorry, I'm running out of charge here, and it's fine. But the Bulls are very strong. They put away a full strength Saris team, like in the Champions Cup, and they destroyed them and put them away pretty handsomely. So they're on the roll this year, and I think that Loftus has been a very difficult place for a lot of people to go. So and also the Stormers had like a catastrophically bad game. But I don't think they'll play that badly as well. So I'm still pretty sure they'll make the knockouts. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the semi-finals, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think they're going to make the finals or win it.
Okay, I love it. This must be what I sound like when I talk about the Ospreys. This is great. Enda, did you want to move on now to the Sharks game? Sharks and Lions game?
Yeah, and we just kind of wanted to get, maybe just before we do, just AP, like in terms of where are the Sharks at? Like, I know it's $1 million question maybe, but like with the superstars in their playing squad and their budget and everything, how are they rock bottom of the log? And is Plumtree now under massive pressure, do you think, or would that be the worst thing to do, is get rid of him and then they're back to square one? Like, where are the Sharks at? Like, what is going on from your perspective?
I think it's just meltdown chaos. Like, who knows? Like, it defies all level of understanding that they're just this bad, right? I would agree with you that getting rid of Plumtree would be a really bad idea. I think that, they said, oh, Sean Everett, he's not up to the task. He can't manage, big players. And then he's performing really well at Edinburgh. So you're like, okay, well, there goes that theory. Plumtree, great caliber, understands the Sharks, has coached there a long time before, like understands the culture. So like, there's no bedding in period where foreign coach type situations. And no, he gets the gig, and he has caliber. He has pedigree. So I really don't think it's an issue with him. I just think that they are in an absolute doom spiral at the moment. I think that their recruitment strategy has been bonkers, frankly. It's like, and now even still, they're telling you, I know, let's just sign another 3 Springboks, that'll fix it. So no, all that means is that instead of having 13 players absent for half the season, you can have 16 players absent for half the season. Your problem is that, these guys are, well, they're missing for the 4 weeks that you start the season with because they're on tour with the Springboks, and then their mandatory rest period. And so it doesn't make sense to stack your team with a team full of from like dead set starters. You need to start looking at sort of the level below that, which is ultimately where the Lions flourish, because historically, I mean, they've had no Springbok players, so they just stay as a core throughout the entire season.
And fewest players used in the URC by a fair bit.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, that's partially because, one, they stay as a cohesive unit, and two, because they have no depth, because they just can't, they just don't have the resources the other teams. Bless them, I love the Lions, but, it's just the truth. So the Sharks are in an absolute quagmire. Now, you kind of just have to look at how players that leave the Sharks go on and perform. Sonela Nohamba, couldn't get a gig at the Sharks, is now in the Springbok alignment camp after performing at the Lions. Selimpilo Gumede, Bulls number 8, same story, couldn't get a gig. Marius Lowe captains the Lions, couldn't find any form at the Sharks. Like, it's just time after time after time, these guys leave and suddenly just find a new lease on life. So there's something rotten in that setup. I'm at a loss, frankly. Like, without tooting my own horn, I sort of feel like I know a little bit about South African rugby, but I have no idea what's going on there.
Something's just off, isn't it? But speaking of their opponents, though, the Lions, we told the story on this channel before about the Lions and the difficulties they face. They're not bad. They're a good team. Like, they would beat most URC teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they've got, like, the squad that they have. I mean, it's basically just a collection of guys who are playing with a massive chip on their shoulder. These are guys who came out of school system. This is not just a case of like, oh, they left other URC teams, or these are guys who came out of the school system where all their buddies at the big rugby schools were getting shiny contracts at the Stormers or the Sharks or wherever, and these guys sort of had to quote unquote settle for the Lions. Western Province didn't really want them. The Bulls were like, no, we have too much depth. So these guys are guys who've played with something to prove from literally day dot. If not even the Montpellier scouts are picking you up, then you're a bit like, okay, what the hell now? So, and I think that they have to endure so many memes and so much chat and so much noise externally that you get this you get the sense that they really do play for each other and that there's an unbelievable cohesion. And I know it's such a cliche to say, but I feel like it is true. Even the ironically named Cash van Rooyen, who's the coach, he kept so much flack, and yet somehow they're just really, really performing this season. And getting guys into those alignment camps is such a massive thing. Like, we always used to joke that the only thing that their social media ever did was like post happy birthday messages. Was like post happy birthday messages to players. Now at least they can post things saying, well done, we've made the squad.
Yeah, that's so good. Right, so speaking of good vibes then, so quick bit of fun, bit of a game for us. I want to pick the pure vibes Springbok 15. So this is not like, I don't want to see Etzebeth in this team, even if he is vibes. This is pure fun players that just make us smile getting into the team. So try and do it a bit quickly, but so number 1, I've got a couple of names penciled in here, but it's massively up for debate. Number 1 is the most vibes player, Oxenche, in the loose head.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Ox is a vibe. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, number 2, I kind of feel I want to go for who's the massive guy who plays for Bulls? Who's the guy who's too big to be?
Oh, Jan-Hendrik Wessels.
Vessels.
Yeah, you can only. I mean, he played lock at school and then prop. He played lock and prop, and now they're moving him to hooker. I mean, like, that is just an aberration, really, isn't it? That's pure vibes. I'm 100% with you on that one.
Cool. My nomination for tight head is the vibes man himself, Enda's favorite player, Nhlaba Kanye. Just the 135 kgs. I don't know. I mean, there's props to legends in South Africa. So is anyone even more vibes than him?
No. And the Earthling's close, but no, it's Asenati and Nhlaba Kanye, 100%.
Okay, I'm going to let you nominate a lock now, because I've learned doing this that you let South Africans talk about locks. So who are we going for then? Who's a vibes lock?
My vibes lock is Hiron Andrews. I'm not 100% sure if he's left the Sharks yet. I think he might be on his way, but I think he's technically still on the contract. Hiron Andrews just seems like a really lacquer oak. So he seems like a real vibes guy. And I think the other guy at lock that I'd say is good vibes is a guy at the Lions called Reinhard Nochnagel. There's a really funny video of him when it's part of the sort of the flight chaos, and he's sort of squished into all 6'8" or whatever of him into an economy class seat, and his knees are literally up by his chin. So just for that video alone, Reinhard Nochnagel.
Gonna have to look up his name to make sure I spell it right later. Okay, number 6 for what he did in the World Cup. I've got Dion Fourie.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Dion Fourie.
I haven't got 46 years of age.
Yeah. I haven't got a 7. I've completely got no idea.
Oh, it's Hachiva Daimani. Got to be. I'm going to play.
I've got him at 8. I've got him at 8. So who?
Yeah, he's more of an 8. Yeah. Okay, fine. Let's stick him at 8, but then let's think about a 7 then. My pick is Sibabalo Kolma, because he's like I watched one game where he's playing for the Cheetahs against the Sharks actually, and this guy just annihilated them. He was like a man on a mission, hitman, and from that day I was like, you are now my hero. He's my vibes guy. He brings the pain.
Who did he play for? Sorry,
he's a Cheetahs player.
Cheetahs. Oh, that's gonna be hard to look up. Okay, number 9, Nahamba. Any arguments?
No arguments.
Who's the vibes 10? I feel like Money is still the vibes 10. So what is his goal kicking? Like sometimes he kicks a post and you're like, what are you doing?
Vibes,
I love him, by the way. I absolutely love the guy.
Yeah, it's either Mani or Siamasuku, but we'll go with Mani. Mani's the vibes guy at
10. I haven't got any vibes wingers. You can suggest a couple of things.
Edwil van der Merwe on place for the Lions, he's the one wing, and I'd say Leolin Zas on the other wing. These both,
Zas,
or maybe Sergio.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe Zas. No, we'll go Zas. Yeah, Zas and Edwil are the 2 vibes wingers.
Cool, awesome. I'm vetoing inside centre as Sasha Feinbergen Gomazulu. Just 100. Absolute favorite player of mine. He just looks so good while he's doing it as well. And then, so that leaves us with 2 positions. We need an outside centre and a fullback.
13 is probably Lucanio. But if we're saying that he's too classy, even though he is vibes, I'm going to say Wandisile Similani. He's 100% vibes.
Yeah. Just gone to the Bulls, right?
Stormers. Yeah, from the Bulls to the Stormers, yeah.
Right, yes.
And then at fullback, I've got to say Kirtley. Kirtley needs to be in the squad somewhere. Kirtley is just full vibes.
So obviously Warwick Galant is very vibes.
He is, yeah. Boogie.
But yeah, and I had Quan Horn written in there just because of how good he's been for the Lions this season, but he's not really vibes. He's just good.
He's just good.
Which is not what the team is about. Great, right? I'll tweet that out later and expect to get tons of interaction. Let's go back to the script then, and right. So Enda.
Jumping on. If my phone does die, I'm really sorry. I think I'm like on 3 or 4%. So if I die, I die. But let's keep going.
Okay, no worries. So Enda, it was the Pirate Rugby podcast Derby Take 2 this weekend, and your Connacht did over my Scarlets. What you again? I'll let you go first because you're the winner. What happened? Was it a good performance? Really?
It was an okay performance. It's another win. It gets Connacht back up to the top 8, which is important. I was really impressed by the front row. Connacht Rugby tweeted something about earlier. 29 carries between them, 6 defenders beaten, 3 line breaks, 2 offloads, and a try. Really impressive. Anger, I should say. There was a commentator who pronounced him as Ongier before, but it's actually Anger. I might edit that out. We'll see. But yeah, he's been phenomenal since he came down from Leinster. He's getting a lot of game time this season. He made a lovely break and an offload during the game. And also, Kyle Ford has to be called out at inside centre. Just announced earlier as well that he signed a 2-year contract as well, which is really good. Came through the system and Connacht played for Corinthians. Great to see him do well. Another win. I'm not really sure where Connacht are at. Like I think it looks like they've turned a corner in that game versus the Bears, where they got that strong win, and they've been doing well since after a bit of a blip. So I think they're on the upward curve, but we'll see. What did you see from a Scarlets perspective? Did you expect anything?
It's another slow start. So we've conceded a try in the first 10 minutes of 10 out of our 15 games this season, and we've gone behind in 8 of our 15 games this season in the first 5 minutes. So we love to just give teams a head start. Since we lost to Black Lion in the Challenge Cup, we've had a complete redrawing of our game plan. And what that redrawing has meant is that we just play with no territory. So if you look at it on a graph and you plot our average territory against games, it peaks at Black Lion, and then it's just been going down like a kid's slide since then, and we just play without territory all the time. And the amount of churn in our starting 15 is just ridiculous as well. We haven't used many players, but it's just a revolving door constantly, changing all the players every match, and it's just, yeah, it's not good. So I won't talk about it too much. Anyway, let's get into our rugby roundup then. So we'll start with women's rugby. So Enda, do you want to talk us through the PWR this week?
Yep, so Gloucester Hartpury beat Exeter 31-24, whilst Saracens scored 50 points against the beleaguered Tigers. Sale, I should say, are still bottom, having lost to Loughborough Lightning. What's going on in the Celtic Challenge?
So it was the last weekend of the Celtic Challenge. We've really loved this competition. We hope it comes back again. It was a big Welsh derby between Gwalia Lightning and Brisbane Thunder. Thunder got a big win. It was like watching a completely different team to what started the season. It was fantastic to watch. So that was great. And then in the other game, Edinburgh drew with Clovers. It was the second draw of the season for Edinburgh. So it shows how competitive that league is. So yeah, we hope to see that competition come back again. So AP, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll talk quickly about Super Rugby now, and then we'll let you go, and so your phone doesn't die on you. So it was a super round this weekend. All the teams playing in the same venue. What do you think Super Rugby organisers will be thinking looking over what happened in South Africa this weekend?
Well, I mean, I kind of feel like, this is, I don't want to talk ill of the past, right? You don't want to be that guy who breaks up and then has nothing good to say about the ex, right? Like, that's sort of so cheap. So it's like, they seem to be very happy doing Super Rugby Pacific. We're very, very happy in the URC. Let's let bygones be bygones. I mean, I'll say, for example, it's funny how many questions the organisers got and all the various sort of, administrators of New Zealand and Australia got about South Africa coming back to Super Rugby. I think Paul Carley wrote an article either yesterday or today. So it was quite funny that people are asking them about that. Clearly, there's one eye going over to South Africa and seeing, geez, 50,000 people into a stadium. It's quite a vibe. I know that there weren't quite the same amount of people that pitched up in, I think it was Melbourne where the Super Round was. So, but look, overall, I think that they've got a product that obviously they believe in. They're looking to expand. They want to bring the Jaguars back in. It's quite funny. I saw that someone said like, oh yeah, no, the Jaguars we're very keen on, but we're not so sure about, if we could have South Africa back in, like logistically, we're not sure that's going to work. It's like, guys, Argentina's a lot further away, I guarantee.
New Zealand and Argentina are the two furthest away places you could think of.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? It's fine. Whatever. If you want to repeat the same errors you made with and multiple time zones, and yeah, you know what? That's what I say. I wash my hands of it. I'm happy if they're happy. I actually think that it's really encouraging to see some of the Aussie sides like get big results. And despite whatever's going on in Australian rugby, and I think it rivals only Wales in terms of whatever's going on. I think today someone's decided to sue Rugby Australia. I think it's the Rebels that decided to sue Rugby Australia. Yeah. So it seems to be a maelstrom over there. But having said that, somehow they're getting results, and that is encouraging for them. And with Schmidt at the helm, finally they've got probably someone that like Aussie rugby probably needs. You need a bit of a yin and yang. Like, you can't have like the typical Aussie psyche when it comes to rugby with an Eddie Jones, because it doesn't work. You need to have a bit of a disciplinarian to temper and tame that. So I think positive signs. I think they've got talented players. Clearly they're getting results. So actually their on rugby performances, despite the noise off field, is probably quite good. So do you know what? Yeah, I mean, good for them.
Cool. Awesome. Like you said, Waratah's a huge result over the Crusaders. Fantastic for the competition. Feels like a change for Super Rugby with the Crusaders not being at the top anymore. And then the Brumbies, unfortunately, were on the wrong end of hiding off the Chiefs, where the Chiefs are probably going to be going for the title this season. And Moana Pacifica got a huge result against Fiji and Drua. Drua, unfortunately, not won a game yet, but it's such a massive result for the Moana Pacifica. And it was a high-scoring game, as it always is between those two, and there's some exciting rugby playing. And if you've seen the clips of like the commentators going absolutely mad, I caught the last 10 minutes of that game because the time zones here in the UK, and it was definitely the right 10 minutes to catch. Anyway, mate, AP, thank you so much for joining the pod. We've really loved having you on. It's been so educational for us as well, getting all your inside scoops and everything as well. So cheers for that. And yeah, we'll make sure to have you back on at some point in the future.
Guys, thanks so much. I've really, really enjoyed it. Honestly, it's been brilliant. Yeah, anytime.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, then.
Cheers.
So we move on to Japan Rugby League One, Huw, will we? And we can discuss maybe what's going on there. The Wild Knights are still on top with a perfect record, closely followed by Brave Lupus, I should say. There was a big win for Sun Goliath over Black Rams, and Artie Sevilla scored 4 tries as Kobe Steele and beat Toyota Blitz. Yeah, what's going on in Super Rugby Americas?
Yeah, so Dogos are still top after a win over Yacare, who are from Paraguay. And Peñarol, the champions from last year, got back to winning ways. They're from Uruguay, and they got a win over American Raptors. Into the Northern Hemisphere competitions, and we start with the top 14. The biggest game of the weekend was arguably Oyonnax versus Montpellier, which was a bottom of the table clash. Montpellier won the league in 2021, but really having the opposite kind of season this season. And they managed to prevail against Oyonnax, who were promoted from the Pro D2 last season, 39-34. So a high scoring game, a relegation 6-pointer, as they say. So that's probably sees Montpellier safe, but they could still end up in the access game. And if they do, it's anyone's business, because the Pro D2 is absolutely stacked this season. I haven't actually updated the script for the Pro D2, so I'm going to be testing my memory now. Van picked up a disappointing loss after their big win against Béziers last weekend. I think Provence also may have picked up a disappointing defeat, which means that Béziers themselves are now top after they got another win. Storty, I think, scored another try. I put out a post on my Twitter about him the other day. 17 tries in 13 games for Béziers this season. Just absolutely ridiculous from the Portuguese winning us. So that's fantastic. Apologies if I've got some of those results wrong. Like I said, I forgot to update the script for that one. So Enda can rescue my incompetence now by talking about the English Championship.
So Coventry are still second with the win over Doncaster, which is a big game as the two are very close in the table. Cornish Pirates are close in third with the win at Caldy, and Billy 12 Trees is still doing the job for Ealing as they put another big score up against Nottingham. Then in the All-Ireland League Division 1A, there were wins for Clontarf, who beat Young Munster 31-12. Dublin University got a win against City of Armagh, which is a big result for them, 31-26. Lansdowne lost to Cork Con. Shannon beat Ballinhinch, and Terranure had a close 7-point win over UCD. And then in terms of the table, we've got Clontarf still on top on 61 points, closely followed by Cork Con on 59 points. Where are we then? Well, let's move on to the MLR, which had its first opening round of games this weekend. Huw, how did it go?
Yeah, just quickly, I was right about Pro D2. Vaughan lost to Biarritz, weirdly. Biarritz, the absolute circus of a club that it is. And Provence beat Colombiers. So there you go. I was right. So MLR, so it was the first round, and as we said, the Miami Sharks, yes, not Dolphins, Sharks, Miami Sharks played their first ever game. Free Jacks are top of the table with a 46 points to 15 win over Anthem RC. Namibian international Vian Conradi was on the score sheet in that game, so you might recognize him from the World Cup. The new LA team lost their first game to Dallas Jackals 32-29, so a very close game there. And then in the Welsh Premiership, Carmarthen Queens got a huge win over Aberavon. So Carmarthen Queens only won 3 games all season. Aberavon reasonably mid-table, and it was something like 52-17, 56-17 to Carmarthen Queens. So fantastic result for them. And Neath got a rare win over a strangely struggling RGC as well. Okay, mate, let's go into the TV guide for this weekend.
So we've got 24 games coming up. We've got the Under-26 Nations, we've got the Six Nations, we've got Top 14, we've got Super Rugby, we've got an All-Ireland League team playing against Portugal. That is going to be broadcast on Portuguese Rugby's socials. I'm not sure where, but once I find out where it is available, it's probably going to be on YouTube. Once I find out, I will tweet about it. Then in other broadcasting news, I just want to mention TG Car and give them another shout out, because it's been confirmed that they're going to broadcast both the men's and the women's All-Ireland League finals this year. So that's more great news on the free-to-air front. I'm pretty sure we're out of time now, mate, but that was definitely enjoyable. Anything else you want to finish up on?
Yeah, just I'm not here next week because I'm on holiday in Spain. So there'll be someone standing in for me as yet to be confirmed. And we'll bring you the show as normal. And I think we'll still manage to do the Friday breakfast show as normal as well. So look forward to that. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you again to AP for being a fantastic guest. And we'll see you all soon. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.